Sleep is thought of as this black box where you don't know what's happening until someone wakes up. If you could actually dialogue with someone in real time while they're dreaming, it would be a really valuable research tool to study sleep.
Konkoly is getting her PhD in lucid dream research. These experiments are some of my favorite because they have figured out how to communicate in real time with someone who's asleep and inside a dream. The lucid dreamers can perceive questions from an experimenter and provide answers using electrophysiological signals. I'm so excited to dive deeper into Karen's research and figure out how she got involved in this type of thing. So welcome to the Dream World podcast. We'll get into your important academic achievements, but I also want to know what personally got you interested in lucid dreaming.
Ever since I was little, I was always really interested in reality and the dimensions and what are the other dimensions. And I would look up on the computer, if you can keep your body in your bed and fall asleep, then you can get up out of it and walk around your house. And so I was trying that when I was 9, but I could never fall asleep because I was doing it in the middle of the day. Then I was, in high school, I was really interested in my dreams and lucid dreaming. I had read about it and I hadn't had any lucid dreams yet, but I was really fascinated by the whole thing. And then one time I was in Barnes & Noble and I picked up the book, A Field Guide to Lucid Dreaming. And I read that right as I was starting college. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I started having lucid dreams and doing all the things that they suggested in that book. And maybe many people, I was like, oh, I really want this to be my job. And then actually, right as I was doing that, I read a paper in one of my classes. It was a freshman seminar on storytelling. And the paper was about how in a lucid dream, your conscious mind is reading the story and your subconscious mind is writing it or something. And that was what the paper was about. But my takeaway was somebody wrote a paper about this for their job. I could do that. And so then I tried to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you turn it into a job? How do you take something so mystical and research it scientifically?
My mom helped a lot because she is great at Googling. I started doing if there was opportunity to choose your own topic for a project at school, I would do it. And then my mom found one of Stephen LaBerge's retreats in Hawaii. And so I was in this program in my undergrad where I needed to do a capstone project on something and it could be pretty free form. So I was I'm going to do it on lucid dreaming, obviously. And so I got that program to actually pay for me to go to Stephen LaBerge's retreat in Hawaii as research. And I was awesome. And then there I met so many people with all these different kind of mindsets and opinions, which actually has kind of led me back to Hawaii now as I'm finishing my PhD. But at that retreat, I was also a little bit of my takeaway was Stephen had a really hard time doing lucid dreaming research in terms of it was such a groundbreaking thing and it was not accepted by the community yet. And he kind of faced struggles because of that. And so after that, I tried to get experience in sleep research labs. So after I went to that retreat, I spent the whole summer in a sleep research internship and people were a little bit disparaging of dream research. People were telling me that it's a little bit fringe. And so I did some side projects on it. But I kind of, my takeaway from that summer was I don't know if I can really, be a dream researcher. And I got the same advice. I went to a sleep conference and people were oh, you can study dreams when you have tenure or, when you're late in your career and it's stable. But I kind of felt well, I either want to study dreams right now or I'll just be a yoga teacher. I don't care. I just want to study dreams. Eventually at that conference, actually, I met my current advisor and he actually was studying, sounds during sleep. And I also met people at the dream conference who helped give me guidance. And that kind of all spiraled together into a magical PhD about lucid dreaming.
Yeah, that's incredible. Honestly, I look up to you so much because I think studying dreams is so cool. That's literally my dream job, no pun intended. So generally, what happens when we're lucid dreaming? What's going on in the brain in terms of when we're asleep?
Yes. Well, that is still an active area of research. So historically, there was a bit of a debate. Is lucid dreaming happening during a hybrid state of consciousness where you're not fully asleep, or is it happening during your most vivid dreams? And I think that there was recently a paper published in support of the idea that lucid dreams happen when you're definitively asleep, you're in REM sleep, and actually your dreams are the most activated and most dreamlike. So there's kind of your brain when you're awake and your brain when you're dreaming. And then lucid dreaming, maybe that represents the far continuum of your brain producing dreams being really active. And then it just causes you to be lucid. But We also have some lucid dreams in the lab that happen as people are waking up or when they are clearly in a hybrid state where it seems like they're partially awake and partially asleep. And the experience that they report is lucid dreaming. So I am personally of the opinion that a bunch of different things in your brain could underlie lucid dreaming.
Is it believed that like we only lucid dream in REM, or can it be other phases of sleep too? Because I feel like I also have lucid dreams not in REM every time.
Really? Well, how does it feel different?
It's not so much the feeling, but it's like if I'm using like tracking my sleep and I'll had just woken up from a dream and it feels like I was just in the dream, but I wasn't necessarily just in REM every time.
Interesting.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that is also an interesting active area of research. I think that people definitely have their most lucid dreams in REM sleep in the lab, but there are a few cases where people have like signaled from stage 2 or maybe like, that's light sleep or like light sleep with a little bit of arousal or something like that. Some people report that they're conscious in deep sleep and there's no contents. So I think that lucidity probably is possible, but it is more difficult to study. One reason that we thought it might be more difficult to study is because it's so often studied with eye movements. And if you want a dreamer to complete an eye movement, then maybe you can't complete an eye movement in light sleep because your eyes aren't moving in light sleep. So maybe that's kind of like circular. So we're using sniffing. We're trying to see if people could sniff in other stages of sleep and stuff like that.
That's so cool. Okay, so what I love about your experiments is that literally you're communicating with people across this border of consciousness while they're asleep through things like you mentioned. They can send certain signals and they can receive certain signals. Your two-way communication experiment, like, can you tell me a little bit about like how it works so people can kind of get a background if they're not familiar with it already?
Sure. So in that study, we wanted to see if you could have a conversation with somebody in real time while they're dreaming and in a lucid dream. And so we've known since the 80s that dreamers can complete signals from within their dreams, such as looking left, right, or twitching their forearm. And those signals can be measured objectively in real time to confirm that the dreamer is communicating from their dream. And so we also know that it's possible to have incorporation into a dream. If your alarm clock goes off and instead of waking up, it gets incorporated into your dream. And so it was my advisor's idea. He was like, sleep is thought of as this black box where you don't know what's happening until someone wakes up. If you could actually dialogue with someone in real time while they're dreaming, it would be a really valuable research tool to study sleep. And so basically what we did is we brought people into the lab. We helped them have lucid dreams. And then once somebody was lucid, we started asking them math problems. So we just asked them really quietly, easy math problems like 8 minus 6. And then people responded with one left-right eye movement for each number in the response. So they responded correctly to the answer to that would be 2. So they'd look left-right twice. And then we actually found, several examples that two-way communication was possible during sleep. Because another thing that was a bit surprising is that dream incorporation isn't always literal. So some of the older studies on dream incorporation might say, okay, well, that person, you present a math problem, maybe they'll have a dream about being in math class, but will they actually be able to hear just what you said? And so that was kind of like a novel advance that yes, oftentimes people can literally just hear what you said and it's not too distorted in the dream. And so our team did that. And then we collaborated with 3 other teams around the world who used kind of variations on the method. Some teams respond by doing facial twitching. Some people asked yes or no questions instead of math problems, or they also asked a tactile, tap somebody on the hand, ask how often they got tapped on the hand. And one team even taught their dreamers Morse code. And then they flashed lights in Morse code in a math problem. And the dreamers decoded the math problem and answered with their eyes. So people didn't answer all the time, but we demonstrated that it was possible.
Yeah, I love that. That's so incredible and mind-blowing. And in what ways did the questions show up in the people's dreams? I know you said it wasn't always literal, but are there any funny ways that would come up?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because our best examples are when they heard what was said literally. So one participant was in this other scene and then they just heard a voice as though they said it was as though it was God or as though it was a narrator of a movie, just talking to them from this other realm. One person heard it come from the radio in their car. One of my favorite examples is from the German team that was presenting Morse code and lights. And so their dreamer was in the hospital, and in the hospital in their dream, they saw a light flickering in Morse Morse code. And so they're like, oh, that's the math problem. I need to decode it. But then it stopped flickering. So then he went around the dream to look for something else that could flicker so that he could get the Morse code back. And so he found a fishbowl, and the fishbowl, he was looking at it and the fishbowl was flickering. But then he dropped the fishbowl and it broke. So then he went outside and looked at the clouds, and the clouds were passing in front of the sun in Morse code. And to me, that example is like so miraculous and amazing, because it just shows like, A, what the dreamer was doing, like enabled his ability to like connect with another world. Also, to me, it has like farther reaching implications. Like that was a real signal that was getting, transmitted to him. And yet it appeared in like a idiosyncratic and like interesting way. And I just think, what does that mean for spirituality and stuff like that?
No, I mean, that's huge. That's literally communicating through different dimensions, really. And so is it hard to find participants that are like lucid dreamers to the point that they can consistently get lucid in the lab and, to carry out these tasks and be able to, remember them from within the dream?
Yes. In the first study, we recruited people. Some of them were lucid dreamers, but some weren't. And we have a method that can help people have lucid dreams. In the first study, it helped them have lucid dreams 50% of the time. We associated a cue with a lucid state of mind and play it again during sleep. However, if somebody's having their first lucid dream, they're probably not going to be able to answer a math problem, because it actually requires like so much kind of skill to do that. Like you have to be able to like have a stable enough lucid dream that you can hear it without waking up. And then also performing signals is a little bit destabilizing, because I feel like if you want to stabilize your lucid dream, you spin around or you do something that like desynchronizes you from your asleep body. And so if you are trying to signal, those are always things that are synchronized with your sleeping body, like looking left and right or sniffing. And so I feel like not only is it kind of hard to find lucid dreamers, but it's also takes a certain amount of skill to like actually practice the things in your lucid dreams that we need in the lab.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I've been lucid dreaming for a long time, so I feel like I'm able to do this. And it's taken years of practice, Sure. And even so, sometimes I can't really tell, like, if I'm doing something in my dream, I'm kind of unsure if it will, like, translate into my physical body or not. So it's like, it can be very confusing to know if what I'm doing is going to wake me up and if it's actually going to do what I need it to do to transmit the signal.
For sure. Have you been sending signals in your lucid dreams?
Yeah, kind of. So I do my own like self-experimentation, just like with my friends and things. And we've had some like interesting results. And I just really mostly just document like my own experiences and try to do tasks from within the dream and just like, practice my lucidity.
Have any of them ever seen you have a lucid dream, like been able to like watch you from a lucid dream?
No, we haven't been able to do that yet, because I don't have like around me, I don't have anybody really that's into it and does like research local to me like that. It'd be cool to participate. But yeah, no, I haven't been able to do that. But I practice kind of with like sounds, and like you were saying,
it's so cool.
Like listening to sounds while I'm lucid dreaming. And a lot of times I'll be able to hear it and become lucid. So I know that can definitely work. I've heard YouTube tracks playing from in my dream telling me like, you're dreaming.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, so it's fun. I know that this stuff works. So I'm so happy that you're actually like taking it further.
For sure. I also feel like in terms of recruitment, like it's really hard to find people like you who are both interested in lucid dreaming and good at it. There's a lot of people that are interested in lucid dreaming, but never actually succeeded in like having frequent lucid dreams. And then there's a lot of these natural frequent lucid dreamers that are kind of a mystery to me. Like if you look up the population statistics, like 20% of people have a lucid dream once a month or more. But when I tried to like recruit people that just said they had frequent lucid dreams, it was really interesting to find that like natural lucid dreamers, to me, it seemed like some of them were having different experiences from people that had like read about lucid dreaming and were using it as like a experimental playground. Like some people just only ever do the same thing, or they know they're lucid, but they never control anything, or they always just wake up, or they always just change the nightmare slightly. And it's kind of like that person is lucid, but might not be good at doing your experiment.
Yeah, that's true. There's so many like little nuances with it, and it can take some practice. So I could see how that gets complicated. So what are you like working on now, or like what are you thinking about studying next? How can you take what you're doing to the next level?
So right now I'm finishing my PhD. It involves a lot of things, but we just actually submitted preprints for 2 papers that are coming out. So one of them is it's a study about how the visual system works in a lucid dream. And so we wanted to see like whether a fundamental feature of the waking visual system applies when you're in a dream. And so what it is when you're awake and you close your eyes, I don't know if you know this, you get like really robust brainwaves on the back of your head that you can see like every time, and they look really different. And it's about like your visual system kind of not working, it's turning off in a way in order to like increase your acuity of other senses. It's really about having your eyes be closed. And so we asked a bunch of lucid dreamers to close their eyes within their dreams and tell us if their visuals went away, and then also study their brainwaves. And so we found that when people closed their eyes in a lucid dream, the visuals went away about half the time, and the other half of the time they stayed, or they could see through their eyelids or something like that. But they didn't get the brainwave that you get when you're awake. So we're still trying to figure out what to make of all that. Yeah, so that was one study. And then we also did another one where we made an Android app for people to use at home that uses our lucid dreaming induction method in a little bit more of a low tech way. It just plays sounds 6 hours after you fall asleep, and it tries to monitor for movement, turn off if you are waking up. And it did give people slightly more lucid dreams. That's another one. And then I'm writing my thesis that has two more studies in it. So one of them is about problem solving in lucid dreams. So this one's probably the most interesting. We gave people riddles, and they were riddles that were not solved during the night. They worked on riddles until there were 4 that weren't solved. And so a riddle could be like, how do you plant 4 trees exactly equidistant from each other? You can't plant them in a square because of the Pythagorean theorem. You can't plant them in a line because then they're obviously not equidistant. And so we gave people riddles like that, and each riddle had a sound. And then we tried to have people have lucid dreams in the lab, and we played the sounds in their lucid dreams to say, work on this riddle, but not this other riddle, right? Because people anecdotally report that lucid dreaming is helpful for problem solving and gives them all these interesting insights. But a kind of issue with that is that it's hard to prove that that's happening from just anecdotes, because that person could be stewing on that problem during the day and before they go to sleep. And then the lucid dream could be maybe like a culmination of that, but like you need like a control condition. And so we tried to say, all right, we're going to tell you which problem to work on in your dream and which one not to. And what ended up happening is that people got less lucid dreams than we thought. But nevertheless, even in their non-lucid dreams, people really dreamed about problems if we played the sounds associated with them. And the other funny thing that happened was that in lucid dreams, for the people that did work on puzzles, the dreams did not really explicitly help them that much in this. The dream characters said ridiculous things that were not the right answer at all. I think in the future, I wouldn't have suggested, like we gave participants 4 ideas for how they could work on the puzzle in their dream. We said you could ask the dream itself for advice or, to work with you on the puzzle. You could ask a dream character, a wise dream character who seems like they know help working on the puzzle. You could try to like enter the puzzle scenario in the dream. So actually, those were the main 3 suggestions. But I think that the dream character suggestion is the one that everybody did. And that was like, I think, a bad suggestion. Dream characters are not reliable performance. And then it was interesting to me how few people wanted to ask the dream a question. Because to me, that's always what I do in my lucid dreams. It's like, I'm talking to my subconscious. I'm going to ask a question. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? And so it was interesting to me that that concept was foreign to so many of our lucid dreamers.
So in REM sleep, our brain activity is very similar to when we are awake, right? Is that true? Can you elaborate on that? And why is that?
Everybody says that. Obviously, it's not that similar because you're hallucinating and you're paralyzed and you're asleep. The reason that everybody says that is because it's desynchronized. It's active, right? So like when you're awake, if you look at someone's brainwaves, they just look like jittering up and down a little bit. But when you are in slow wave sleep, you have giant waves like the ocean that, your brain is all firing on and then it pauses and then it's firing and then it pauses. And this like sequence of firing and pausing shuts down a lot of your brain activity so that there's not as much information being utilized. And so in REM sleep, you have it again looks more like you're awake because there's more information that's being communicated between different areas of your brain. So on one hand, it's kind of indicating like you're conscious, although you're having thought-like dreams and stuff in slow wave sleep, but it kind of is indicating you have more contents of consciousness. But like, there's also a lot of differences. So like one difference is that the areas, there's like a very thin layer part of your brain that like receives incoming sensory information. And that area is having the big ocean slow waves, like when you're deeply asleep. So the part of the area that's receiving new information seems to be maybe more asleep than the rest of your brain. And then your neurotransmitters are totally, totally different in REM sleep. And that's probably why you're having it. So like serotonin, the thing that you sometimes give people, like try to increase if somebody has depression or something, is actually at its very lowest in REM sleep. And if you give somebody like an SSRI, it will like knock out a lot of their REM sleep or reduce it a lot, because serotonin, like you can't have high serotonin in REM sleep. And so that's a lot lower, and that maybe contributes to hallucinating. Your acetylcholine is a lot higher. It's at its highest level ever. That has to do with like cognitive functioning, but only part of it. And so that is way higher in REM sleep. And that's also potentially what's causing lucid dreams and contributing to lucid dreams. And so, yeah, everybody says it's like wake, but I feel like, they're underemphasizing all the things that are different. And of course, your muscle stuff is paralyzed.
Yeah, I'm so glad you explained that. That makes so much sense, because I've always wondered, is that true? And there's so many things going on in our brain while we sleep. Do you even think that our current technology is able to understand the full picture?
No way. I don't think that we have a huge amount of information is missing, because EEG can only look at the brain activity that's like really summed across many brain regions, because, it has to get through your skull before it's being measured. So you can't really know what's going on inside, which areas are active that easily. And then fMRI, first of all, is almost impossible to study REM sleep in an fMRI scanner. There are studies that have done it, but it's hard. And like people often need to be sleep deprived. And it's super hard if you want to play any sounds or capture anything weird like a lucid dream. But even if you did, that has really bad time resolution. So a solution is to study REM sleep in people that are going through pre-surgical epilepsy that have electrodes implanted in their brain. But even that, A, they're only in certain places. And B, it's really hard to, those patients, you can't wake them up 12 times during a night and ask them about their dreams. And you probably can't really train them to lucid dream because you think it's interesting. And so those methods are also how you learn about a lot of other things. A lot of other aspects of cognition is from animals. You implant the electrodes in the animal's brain, and that's how you learn about vision or whatever. But we don't know if animals are lucid dreaming or dreaming. So that's why it's there's a lot of ways that it's really hard to study.
When I met you at the last conference, you were telling me some things to try in my lucid dream. I don't know if you remember, but I did try them.
Look through your finger, right?
Yeah, and plug my nose. Yeah, so I did this, and it looked like how it looks normal. I kind of had double vision, sort of, and I could kind of focus on my finger. So it was kind of normal, what I expected would happen. Yeah, and then when I plugged my nose, it just felt like I could breathe from both nostrils.
It did. Okay. People have been skeptical of me because of the nose plug reality check where the air goes through both nostrils, but I have been trying plugging one nose and the other in the lab a lot, trying to measure it with the nasal cannula. And it was so frustrating. I had my first lucid dream in the lab. I did the task so many times. I plugged one nostril, I plugged the other one. I did all these left rights. I was like, oh my God, I did the task 45 times. It's going to be so amazing. And when I woke up, it was so unclear. You couldn't see my eye movements. And I was just rapidly sniffing the whole time. And one of my nostrils was clogged, so you couldn't really tell if it was happening or not. And anyway, it was super sad that I felt so confident in my dream.
Yeah, I feel like that would happen a lot. You feel in your dream that you're doing something, but there's no way to tell from within the dream if it's translating properly. But I still consider that a win.
I know. I have a lot more sympathy for my participants. I was always how come you guys aren't completing good signals? And now I'm my signal felt good. It's kind of interesting that maybe your, vision or your control of your eye movements, something's a little off there. So although some people are great at signaling. So with the nose thing, like this one, I had one of my friends stick his finger in between his eyes and try to see if there was a double. And he had another hand grow out of his hand, something really weird happened. And I was all right, this one definitely is subject to your expectations. So it's hard to know what you could learn. But this plugging your nose, even if you found somebody that really expected that would only go through the one nostril, if it really did that, I feel it would still be an amazing finding, because you can't do it when you're awake, right? If you can't specifically control it when you're awake, it would be so cool if you could from a dream, but seems like it's not really working. So
yeah, well, that's true. And I guess I have just no knowing what it would have measured by just trying it at home. So I would have to try it in the lab. What are your personal lucid dreams like? You said you had some in the lab.
Yeah, I actually had lucid dreams last night, but they weren't that good. My favorite thing to do in my own lucid dreams is ask existential questions. And I have asked my dreams a lot of different questions, can I meet my higher self, or who am I really meant to be within my life? Or can you show me something about myself I can heal? Or can I experience perfect love? And can I meet my subconscious? And so I don't always get answers. Sometimes the dream just fades. But if I have the wherewithal, that's the kind of thing that I like to do. How are dreams made? I asked that. So I had some ideas for questions last night, but sometimes I don't remember. Last night, I actually had interesting failures of dream recall. I was like jumping up and trying to like do a reality test by like grabbing onto this bar, but like I just couldn't grab onto it and I kept falling through it. And I was like, why can't I even just like grab onto this bar? And then I realized that I needed to focus more on the sensations in my hands. And if I focused on the feeling of my hands on the bar, then I would stay up there. I forget exactly how I got lucid, but I was in this room. I think that was in the second part of the dream, but I was in this room and I was like jumping or something. And I realized I was lucid. And then I tried to like float backwards through the wall to go to a different room because that room wasn't interesting. And instead of going through the wall, the room just kept expanding or something like that.
So what's like the coolest answer that you gotten from your dreams that you can think of? Anything that like stood out to you that you still remember?
Yeah. When I asked to see my subconscious, that was a pretty funny story. That was one of the first ones I asked. And when I asked that, I ended up in a New York giant Wall Street office building. And on the ground, there were all these like planters of like the tops of like plastic heads. And like the whole thing to me, I was like, that's really weird. It looked like almost the top of like a Barbie head or something. And it was like, that looks so artificial. I felt like I was being tricked. And so I was like, this isn't my subconscious. This is like a lobby or something. And so then I was like, I figured it out. My subconscious is in the basement. And so I felt like people were like trying to stop me, but like I found an elevator. And so I kept taking it down. But every time I took it down, I would like fall asleep and I would like kind of lose my ability to like be conscious in my subconscious. And there were all these office people in it. But then eventually I did make it down there and I was awake. And then I ended up in this like big, dark purple kind of like spaceless room. And I heard like, you are inside a neuron star. And on the floor, there was like these triangles with eyes in them, which actually was like a memory incorporation. I was studying the amygdala at the time, and there was like a video of triangles with eyes on them. But anyway, it's kind of like a Mason-esque type thing. And so that's pretty much all that happened.
That is really cool. Inside a neuron star. That's awesome. It reminds me of like the Magic School Bus, how they just go inside your body at like a microscopic level. Yes. And they're just like traveling through. Cool. So when you finish your PhD, I mean, I imagine you're going to continue to do research and go follow along this path. Do you have any like visions or goals?
Yeah, so I'm working on that right now. I'm applying for fellowships to do a postdoc, and I would like to go to Europe. So I'm looking at places over there. I'm applying with somebody, and we were going to try to study like how to continue dialoguing with people while they're asleep, but like expanding it beyond lucid dreams to see if we could have conversations with people while they're in other stages of sleep.
I know there's still so many people that kind of maybe don't see lucid dreaming as something interesting or worth studying, which to me is crazy. But what have you found are like the reasons that people are like skeptical about this kind of stuff academically?
Well, it's interesting because my actual takeaway from my whole set of experiences was like, I feel like it's changed a ton since then. Like, I feel like when I first started, like I applied 2 years behind one of my friends who was trying to do the same thing. And he ended up kind of doing his PhD in another field, coming to lucid dreaming later. And by the time he got there, I feel like it really is becoming more accepted. And the other thing I feel is that I think in Europe and in Australia and like other countries in general, I think they're a little bit ahead on the lucid dreaming game. And so I think that like it was maybe more specifically like the United States that like consciousness and lucid dreaming are kind of just becoming like more. Most people now that I talk to, I haven't really received like judgment or skepticism really since I started. And I feel like I've just been really lucky and like we've been really successful, and lucid dreaming papers are getting into better journals, and it's kind of getting more of a good reputation. And that started before, but I think is increasing now. And so I think that like those opinions that I heard when I first started, I feel like they're not true anymore.
I see it being more accepted and people gaining more interest in it, which I love. Even the general population, people that say they don't dream are trying to, learn more about dreams. So I think that it's kind of expanding, which I love to see.
Well, I just want to say that it's extremely helpful for lucid dreaming research to have somebody who's participating in the research that's a great lucid dreamer. My like star lucid dreamer was my research assistant also. And then it's like, not only is it good for the research because you like actually are doing what you're asking other people to do and you can actually pilot it and stuff. But like, yeah, everybody around you will benefit if you can lucid dream for their studies. So I think that people would be really interested in your help for a lot of reasons. I actually had a friend who wanted to start dream research and she didn't know how to get into it. So she moved to Rochester, where my friend was working and worked in pet store for a year and helped her studies on the side. And now she has a full-time dream research job and can living her best life. So it's always hard for me to like use my research to tell somebody to do something at home because it all depends on playing sounds while you're asleep. But recently I started doing Siled. Do you know that one? Sensory.
Yeah, I like that one actually. It works pretty well for me.
It has given me so many more lucid dreams than I ever had before. Because I don't know, I have like a slight psychic block to doing like intention setting or something. Like, you know, I'm going to have a lucid dream tonight. It's just like really hard for me to do that because I've done it so many nights and not had a lucid dream. I just can't do it or like mild. It's just, I have a little bit of a block. And when I started doing Siled, I did it last night. I had a lucid dream. And I feel like I started doing it in like October. And while I was doing it for like 2 months, I had a lucid dream every week. And before that, I only had a lucid dream once a month. So anyway, that is my latest fanatic thing is that I think that Siled rocks.
For anyone who doesn't know, this is the senses-induced lucid dream technique where you cycle through focusing on your senses until you fall asleep.
What really kickstarted it off is that I did it in the lab while I was also taking galantamine. And I like really, really experienced like, you know, laying there and then like, wow, like there's the hallucinations. And then like, wow, there's the auditory. And I feel like compared to like other types of meditating as you fall asleep, like something about the cycling like really helped me remember that it was hallucinatory as opposed to like just believing it and getting sucked in. So I haven't really timed it or anything like that. I just do like little vision, little hearing, little body sensations, but I just felt like I was like literally entering a portal to another world. And that's really what it was. I was like, wow, like here I am. I'm so vulnerable. I hope nobody comes in the lab, like, and I'm just leaving and I'm hallucinating and I'm hearing stuff and I end up in another world. I was like, wow, yeah, I've been really into Silent ever since then.
What type of effect does galantamine have on your dreams?
I haven't taken it a super ton, but I have taken it several times and it's always really helped me have lucid dreams. Take it at 4 a.m. and especially on like a night when I think I only ever took it once and didn't have one. It tends to make it maybe a little more vivid, but it definitely helps me become lucid. It also makes it harder for me to fall asleep. But when I took it in the lab as part of a self-study experiment.
So why do you think that is? Is that directly related to acetylcholine as well?
That's what I think. I think that there's still some open questions about how it works, but I think that it is increasing the amount of activation in your brain, and that helps you have lucid dreams. And it's kind of making your REM sleep more active in the particular dreamy way that it needs to be.
If you enjoy listening to the Dream World podcast, please leave a review. Whatever platform you're on, drop a comment, follow on social media. Your support means everything to me. I don't get paid for this stuff. Sure, there are people getting paid to do dream research, which is part of my goal, but right now I'm purely doing it because I love talking about dreams and I'm committed to my podcast. So if you're a regular listener, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you and sweet dreams.